Okay, let's jump right into this explainer. Today we're tracing something absolutely fascinating: how executive power has evolved in the world's most populous democracy over the last 77 years. We're going to look closely at the highest office in the Indian government, unpacking how 14 different leaders have essentially shaped the nation, from its independence in 1947 right up to the present day in 2024. It's this incredible timeline packed with historic firsts, massive economic shifts, and honestly some really rapid political transformations. To help us wrap our heads around all this history, we've broken it down into 5 quick chapters: the highest executive office, superlatives and historical firsts, architects of the republic, coalitions and economic reforms, and finally, the 21st century era. All right, Chapter 1, the highest executive office. Let's look at how this role actually works. So it's crucial to understand the balance of power here. Think of it kind of like this. The president is the nominal, ceremonial head of state. They officially appoint the prime minister. But the true executive weight, that rests entirely with the prime minister as the head of government. They're chosen because they lead the political party or a coalition that wins a majority in the Lok Sabha, which is the lower house of parliament. So effective executive power sits with the Council of Ministers, headed by the PM. Keep that dynamic in mind as we see how different leaders actually wielded this immense authority. Moving on to Chapter 2, superlatives and historical firsts. This is where we hit some major milestones. Look at the sheer weight of this number right here, 17. That is 17 continuous years served by Jawaharlal Nehru. He was a leading figure in the independence movement and took office on August 15, 1947. That makes him the very first, and actually still, the longest-serving Prime Minister of India. Popularly known as Chacha Nehru because of his love for children, he held the country's absolute top post all the way until he passed away in 1964. Then, stepping into the role in 1966, Indira Gandhi completely shattered a massive barrier. She became the first and so far the only woman Prime Minister of India, wielding incredible influence on the global stage. She also served the second longest term in the history of the office, which really cemented her as a towering figure in political history. On the other end of the spectrum, we have the number 40. At just 40 years old, Rajiv Gandhi became the youngest Prime Minister in India's history. And here's a fun fact: before navigating the totally intense world of national politics, he was actually a commercial pilot for Indian Airlines. Pretty wild transition, right?
Fast forward a few decades, and another major milestone was reached. Dr. Manmohan Singh took office as India's first Sikh Prime Minister, a really powerful reflection of the nation's diverse fabric right at the highest level of government.
Okay, Chapter 3, Architects of the Republic. Let's look at those crucial early decades. So the early years were essentially an era of highly consolidated power. From Nehru in 1947 through Lal Bahadur Shastri to the start of Indira Gandhi's formidable run in 1966, leadership transitions were super rare. In fact, they were only interrupted by these brief 13-day acting terms from Gulzari Lal Nanda. For the first few decades of independence, executive power was all about these defining long-term tenures. During this foundational time, Lal Bahadur Shastri managed to unite a nation at war with just a single phrase: Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan. Hail the soldier, hail the farmer. He brilliantly recognized that India's survival relied equally on its borders and its agriculture. Keep this phrase in the back of your mind because we're going to see it evolve a bit later. Now, Indira Gandhi's tenure was incredibly intense and fundamentally tested the Indian constitution. She navigated the 1971 war that resulted in the liberation of East Pakistan, imposed a highly controversial state of emergency in 1975, and initiated Operation Blue Star. Tragically, she was assassinated in 1984 by her own bodyguards. Which brings us to Chapter 4, Coalitions and Economic Reforms, a period of serious turmoil, but also massive growth. The 1980s really fractured the political landscape. Rajiv Gandhi's term had to navigate some staggering crises, like the Shah Bano case, the Bhopal gas tragedy, and the Bofors scandal. Soon after, VP Singh took office and implemented the massive Mandal Commission report, which radically changed government reservations and educational institutions forever. And talk about political whiplash, just look at this flow of events. Unlike those stable early decades, the 90s brought profound fragmentation. We're talking rapid-fire leadership changes, minority governments, and leaders heavily relying on fragile outside support just to survive. Chandrasekhar formed a lame duck government in 1990 just to delay elections. P.V. Narasimha Rao stepped in next, and by 1996, H.D. Dave Gowda had to string together outside support just to form a government at all. But, out of all this immense political chaos came an absolute turning point: the 1991 LPG reforms. Under Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao, India enacted these historic economic reforms: liberalization, privatization, and globalization. They fundamentally opened the economy to the world, averting a major crisis and unlocking decades of explosive growth. And that leads us into Chapter 5, the 21st Century Era. Let's talk about modern leadership. As the new millennium dawned, Atal Bihari Vajpayee became a defining figure. Over 3 terms, he ushered India into the global nuclear club with the 1998 Pokhran-2 tests, while at the same time working to improve Indo-Pakistan ties. His impact was so profound that his birthday is actually celebrated across India today as Good Governance Day. Remember Shastri's quote from the 60s? Well, Vajpayee powerfully expanded it, adding Jai Vigyan, which means Hail Science. It beautifully captured India's shift toward modern 21st century technological ambitions. Following Vajpayee, the very architect of those 1991 economic reforms actually took the top job. Dr. Manmohan Singh led the UPA government for 2 full consecutive terms from 2004 to 2014, basically focusing a decade of leadership directly on continued economic expansion. Which brings us right up to the present day. In 2014, Narendra Modi became the 14th Prime Minister. And by securing a historic 3rd continuous term in 2024, his tenure represents a massive consolidation of electoral support, in many ways echoing those very early years of the Republic we talked about. So we've witnessed how this single office has navigated wars, engineered economic miracles, and managed 1 billion-plus people over 77 years. As India's global footprint continues to expand, it leaves us with this one massive question: what kind of legacy will this immense executive power leave on the world stage next?